Can I beat Elden Ring only using the weapon of the last boss I killed? For this run, there's only 3 rules. I'm only allowed to use the weapon and armor of the last boss I killed, and if the last boss I killed doesn't drop a weapon, it's back to my fists. Meaning I'll have to start with nothing. After making my character and naming him Carl, the conquest could begin. To start the run, I decided to go kill the Soldier of Godric because he was instantly accessible, his weapon's available, and he's easy enough that I could kill him at level 1 with my bare fists. After clobbering the Soldier of Godric, I headed to the Gatefront ruins to collect his sword as well as Torrent. Finally, I had transportation and a real weapon, but I did not have the required strength to wield the sword. So I went to Fort Ferrith to grab the Radagon sword steel. Next, I made my way to the Stormveil castle to face the first main story boss, Margit the Fell Omen. I managed to beat Margit pretty quick, but there was a problem. Margit doesn't drop a weapon, meaning I was back to my fists. Yeah, that's gonna become a theme throughout this video. Luckily, I know a secret technique created by Gump Lardo. It's possible to kill the scaly misbegotten with only kicks as it stops any of his attacks. It's a slow, boring process, but after 20 minutes of kicking him, he will succumb. Now that I had a weapon, again, I went to do the unthinkable.
Can you hear me? Aye. Thank you.
Listen, you can judge me, but it's worth the extra 10% damage. To distract myself from the horrific act I just committed, I progressed to the Stormveil castle to kill this bum. With Godric defeated, I turned in his remembrance for his axe and traveled north into Liurnia to grab the Glintstone Key. Once I was inside the academy, I made my way towards a giant red dog, who proceeded to ruin me for an hour straight. So I employed the ultimate soul strategy of changing nothing and running back over and over again until the boss was dead. It took way longer than it should have, but the Red Wolf was defeated, and he doesn't drop a weapon. That was no problem though, because as I was approaching the Carrion Knight, I realized I could probably use the giant falling boulder to kill him. So I lured him out to the steps, kicked him into position, and before I knew it, his sword and armor were mine. Now I was fully LARPing as the Carrion Knight minus one important detail. I didn't have the intelligence to wield his sword. I figured that even without the requirements, I could still probably kill the Crystallian for the smithing bell-bearing one. So I made the trip north for the Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel. Now I had the first smithing bell, but I was back to no armor in my fists. To get my next weapon, I would need to go up the Grand Lift of Dectus. So after grabbing the second half of the medallion from Fort Height, I went up the lift, entered the Altus Plateau, and made my way to Mount Gelmir to kill Anastasia the Tarnished Eater. To kill her without a weapon, first I lured her towards these Kyoshi warrior guys, lined up the attack a few times, and without throwing a single punch, she's dead and her cleaver's mine. Next, I went to go buy some smithing stones and leveled the cleaver to +6. Once that was done, it was time to kill Renala. After the Renala fight, I went to go grab her armor and staff, which I looked absolutely amazing in. But I was way too stupid to wield her staff, so I took off to kill the Draconic Tree Sentinel, because I know a way to kill him without a weapon. First, you aggro the Golem, then aggro the Tree Sentinel, lure the Tree Sentinel to this rock over here, which you'll use as cover from the Golem, and once he goes in for an attack, trade spots with him. Line up the shot, and repeat until he's dead. Once the Draconic Tree Sentinel was finally dead, I entered the capital city and navigated my way to the Pissman, where I quickly realized that the Dragon's Claw is one of the worst weapons in this game. It's incredibly slow, does like no damage, and uses a ton of stamina. Obviously, I didn't upgrade it at all before this fight. I'm under leveled and I have no armor, which may have contributed to my struggles, but I'm just gonna blame it on the weapon. Anyway, after the beating I took from Godfrey, I decided it was time to grab a couple upgrades. First, I collected all the available sacred tiers and upgraded my flasks. Then I headed to the Weeping Peninsula to get my next weapon by luring the Deathbird to this bow golem over here, lining up the shot a few times and claiming my reward, the Sacrificial Axe, which I actually upgraded to +10 this time. I also bought a Finger Seal, grabbed Flame Grant Me Strength, the Axe Talisman, and the Spiked Croc tier. With all that equipped, it was time to destroy Morgoth. It only took about an hour of attempts. After killing Morgoth, I celebrated by desecrating his corpse. Then I grabbed the rolled medallion from Melina and threw on my Morgoth cosplay. I couldn't wield his sword though, so I made a quick detour to the Albinaris village for a larval tier. Since I finally had my first bleed weapon of the run, it was time to kill the dragon fellow at Fort Faerun. Next, I wanted to get Morgoth's sword to at least +9, so I visited Ichi to grab Somber Stones 1 through 4. Then I traveled around the map for a bit to get 5 through 9. Once that was done, I headed to the Lift of Rold, navigated through the Mountaintops of Giants, grabbing the 11th and 12th Sacred Tiers, and headed to the foot of the Forge to face the Fire Giant, who was able to one-shot me with any of his attacks. But Morgoth's sword melts him, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Now that the Fire Giant was out of the way, I went to go grab a strand of his hair. Yeah, remember when I said that the Dragon's Claw was bad? I was silly and naive. This weapon is complete garbage. To get rid of this thing as quickly as possible, I headed to Limgrave to kill Bloodhound. I also snagged his armor from the Gelmir hero's grave. that I've stolen the Bloodhound's entire identity, I needed a couple upgrades. First, I grabbed all the Somber Stones to get +9, then I grabbed the Bloodflame Blade, the Claw Talisman, a Larval Tear to Rebirth, and everything I would need to craft a few Sleep Pots. Because there's no way I was letting the Godskins 2v1 me. With everything gathered, it was time to fight my least favorite boss in the game. I feel no shame for what I did to them. Anyway, to get my next weapon, I would have to do something just as bad, if not worse, than using Sleep Pots. I was gonna enter the Radon Festival and contribute nothing. You'd think this would be boring, but it was actually pretty fun sitting on this hill watching the summons like I was a general and they were my soldiers. Obviously, in reality, I'm just a lazy chud sitting on the sidelines, but, you know. After he was dead, I threw on his armor and swords, got a Larval Tear to Rebirth by making this giant kill himself, and upgraded the swords to +10. After cheesing those last few bosses, I needed a real challenge, so I decided to face what is, in my opinion, the hardest main story boss, Maliketh the Black Blade. It took me hours and countless attempts, but eventually Maliketh was dead. So I slipped into his skin, upgraded his blade to +9, and navigated through the ruins of Lane-Del to kill the biggest fraud in this game. He calls himself the All-Knowing and comes right after you just killed the embodiment of death, yet he's one of the easiest bosses in this game. Honestly, I don't even respect Gideon enough to rebirth and use his kit to kill Godfrey, so I made the call to cheese the Deathrite Bird and K-Lid for the Death Poker. With Godfrey slain, I repeated the same old routine for what felt like the millionth time. I threw on his gear, rebirthed, and upgraded the axe to +10. After countless identity thefts, rebirths, and boss cheeses, there was only one thing left to do. Become the Elden Lord.
our seed will look back upon us and recall an age of fracture.